Hello everyone, I'm Devan. Welcome to my channel. This is an effort from my side to narrate some stories in a serial manner. My channel best endeavors to keep my viewers captivated by my stories on end. I request all your support and encouragement always. It's your effort and encouragement that keeps me going. Hence, do watch my videos completely, and if you like them, kindly like, share and subscribe. And don't forget to hit the bell button for the notifications. So my dear viewers, let's get on with it. I lived in a middle-class family in Nantes, France. We lived in a middle-sized home, not very stupendous. I had for a better life a caring family, which comprised of my mother, father, and grandfather. I was a hard worker. My principal objective was to be rich and rich and rich. I literally wanted my family to live in extravagance for at least once in their lives, and I shall be contented with nothing else. Winston Fernandez. I was not a bad pupil and was a history fanatic. My parents were perpetually busy and would appear at home only at nightfall. My grandfather really loved to narrate stories of his past, whereto I would listen captivated on end.
Grade 12. Listen carefully.
Miss Alice D. Sanchez, my history teacher, shouted.
I want all of you to discuss with your grandparents and prepare a written account based on their or their grandparents' extraordinary experiences during their early ages. The person who provides the best and the most genuine information with details before the 5th of August will be rewarded with a scholarship. And remember, your story should be a real incident and not mere imagination. Do I make myself clear?
She announced sternly. My classmates and I replied in the affirmative. Scholarship was and is my most coveted reward. I had strived to possess the status of scholarship from my early grades, for the expenditure regarding my education were increasing considerably, and I was with the one and only objective to not trouble my parents. After enduring so long hardship, I found this as a golden opportunity. I must get it, I reiterated to myself. The bell rang, and all my friends were overwhelmed with bliss as our holidays, which were of 5 days, have commenced. Nonetheless, I remained solemn. After hours of pondering, whilst I walked down the pavement, I came to this conclusion that I would prepare an imaginary story which would seem to be genuine when read, as I was left with no other alternative. Grandfather's stories too cannot be accepted, as he was a man of exaggeration. I reached my home after traversing through the wintry shades of my beloved Nantes. I knocked on the 7-feet door.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Where have you been? I was waiting for you.
My grandfather exclaimed. I observed that he was more keyed up than he used to be. I just met with a neighbor, Mr. Fridgetson. I stammered as I lied. Mr. Fridgetson was a neighbor who lived next door. He's an American scientist who got exiled from his country years ago as one of his inventions turned out to be real trash. Since then, his reluctance to get back has turned him into a French citizen. I asked him the reason for his joy, because I seldom saw him being ecstatic, whereto he gave a fascinating reply. His ancestral home, which he had once told me about in one of his exaggerated stories, was rebought after centuries by his brother, Bolins de Fernandez, from a man called Roger. Grandfather has neither had a chance to catch a glimpse of his ancestral home's interior nor its exterior, as it had been sold long back prior to his birth, and in addition to that, he and the whole Fernandez family had been restricted entry. This caused a huge infuriation, but we maintained our amicability. It was midnight. Everyone were asleep. I was lost in my thoughts of achieving a scholarship. I tried to write a story of my own, but unfortunately, my conscience wouldn't allow me to, and my mind was deserted. Exasperated by my impotence, I lied on my bed, pleased by the fact that I and my grandfather had decided to pay a visit to his ancestral home tomorrow. I hoped I'd find some clue for my story there. The very next day, my grandfather, accompanied by me, as I had requested him to, paid a visit to his ancestral home, which was located in Bordeaux. After hours of restless journey, we arrived at our destination. My grandfather and I stepped out of his red 1970s Ford in amazement. It was a magnificent spectacle. The ancestral home had 3 floors and seemed to have an American origin. My grandfather, who was wonderstruck, said,
What a great home had my forefather built.
In order to correct him, I retorted, "It's not a home, it's a bungalow." There was a rusty gate fixed to a small fence in front of it, which seemed to be sabotaged due to lack of maintenance. Bewitched by the bungalow, we had failed to notice the gate in front of us. My grandfather stepped forward and had inadvertently slammed it. The gate fell as it got detached from its hinges. A door swung open and we recognized him. It was Roger, the former owner of the residence, as of now.
Welcome, welcome. You must be the new owner, right, sir? Yes. How are we today? Well, I just arrived this morning to have a look at this place before I hand it over to you. Oh, okay. Let's have a look in, shall we? Sure, sir. But I'm afraid I have a bad memory, so could you reiterate your name, please? Fernandez. Blank Fernandez. And this is my grandson, Winston.
I observed a slight expression of fright in his expressive face. He took us in and showed us each and every room in an organized manner. The sophisticated things which were seen in the room were enthralling, though I had no idea about what they were. We accompanied him upstairs and suddenly his phone rang.
I'll be back in a while.
He said and hurried down the stairs. We started exploring the house in his absence. Everything displayed in the house were jaw-dropping. Whilst exploring, a rope which was hanging from the ceiling got caught on my shirt. In order to extricate myself, I pulled the rope and a staircase came down from the ceiling.
Oh, forefather, what an amazing house you've got.
My grandfather exclaimed. Startled, we went up the stairs and found that it was an attic. The attic had hardly a space for both of us to walk, for it had been loaded with tons of obsolete items. As I made my way through, leaving my grandfather behind, I found an opulent chest which was ensconced at a corner of the attic. With much of curiosity, I opened the box and was disillusioned. A minuscule pot, a pretty feather, and a worn-out diary. This very well indicates that these items are of paramount importance, since they were isolated in a huge chest. I called out for my grandfather, who was lagging behind. His feet, obedient to my call, came and stood abreast me.
Oh, it's a quill. How nostalgic.
He remarked enthusiastically.
People used to write with this prior to the invention of pens.
He added. He too elucidated the use of the pot, which he might have speculated. I jotted down his lectures in a small notepad, which I perpetually carried along. I took the next thing in the chest, the diary, though it did not seem worth looking. I held it in my hands and turned its pages, which were yellow and crinkly. I was contented to see the diary was written in my vernacular. I read them aloud, skipping quite a lot of words which were not visible. Tuesday, 2nd July, 17. I had a traumatic experience today, which obliged me to write a diary for the first time. For I cannot contain my rage. I, common man, 3 years ago, residing in Paris, I was alarmed as one of my friends informed me that King Louis X had troops to move into the city, would soon them to open fire upon the people. Caught in a frenzy of fear, I migrated to Bod, where I had met with a gentleman. Time elapsed, relationship consolidated. Though we became good friends, neither was I acquainted with his second name, nor did I want to. Most of the Europeans were least bothered about the afflicted, whereas I, always been known as a humanitarian. Unfortunately, as I joined hands with this person, I started getting acquainted with the slave trade. As I got familiar with this inhuman act, which merely comprised of exploitation and repression, the A turned out to be a frequent haunt for me, albeit the journey was horrendous. Once we have in Africa to buy the slaves from the local chieftains, it takes us 3 whole months for the long voyage across the Atlantic to Caribbean. Nevertheless, I owe my prosperity to the slave trade. Later, we came to a consensus in building a home together. Its expenditure came up to 10,000 livres. About a month later, he turned out to be so avaricious that he came to me, gave hardly 100 livres, and admonished me to evacuate myself as soon as possible, whereto I had strongly opposed. As disputes and quarrels perpetuated, he charged a fallacious case against me. Unfortunately, the court charged me with treason, and tomorrow, as my fate had decided, I shall be. Grandfather, what's this? I asked. It's written Guil over here. What does that mean? I added, querulously.
No idea, son. First and foremost, let's complete reading the diary.
He replied.
Perhaps we might get a clue.
He added, with his eyes riveted in the diary. I continued. That obnoxious man, supported by the government, as he was a noble, and I wasn't. This man shall never be spared and will regret, as someone, someday, would be there on behalf of me for my revenge. Hardly an hour ago, we had an armed fight as my patience had dissipated. This fierce fight ended up in injuring his wrist very badly. This incident proved to be quite helpful as wound on his wrist, which seemed to be chronic, made him rather vulnerable. He wasn't able to write anything. Hence, he failed. Convey an important message. The court. This resulted the failure of the jury. Take cognizance of his expostulation, which peradventure be the reason for the delaying of mine. Everything is out of my hands. My position in the Jacob's Club was replaced by that traitor. Presently, the court has ordered that the abode be in the hands of me, E. Fernandez. I got it. I've got a real written account of my forefathers' extraordinary experience, I exclaimed, unable to contain my joy.
But Winston, I couldn't figure out most of his writings.
My grandfather expostulated with a bewildered expression. We must figure it out, though it's pretty baffling, I remarked with self-esteem. The answers for all our queries is just before us, embedded in an old and crinkly diary which I had considered to be worthless. But apparently I was wrong. My obstacles are the obliterated words.
Mr. Blank! Mr. Blank!
A voice came. We went to the stairs and found that it was Roger. Up here, I responded.
Sir, I'm afraid we must disperse, as your brother will be here any minute for the cleaning purposes.
He informed. We were about to climb down the stairs when I suddenly remembered the diary. I went back and took it along, without my grandfather's knowledge, believing that it would come handy. We bade Roger adieu and headed due north towards Nantes. I was pretty overwhelmed by my forefathers' writings, and so was my grandfather, I perceived.
In fact, our family would have been much more richer had we not given away this property.
My grandfather said in a melancholic tone. We were on our way back home when my grandfather had mentioned these overwhelming words. It wasn't given away, it was stolen by his own friend, I ejaculated with infuriation. Whoever he is, or whatever he is, I must know him. Forefather, kindly do accept my apologies, for neither was I there for you, nor did I appear on behalf of you to claim all your dispossessed assets. Nonetheless, your property is now in the hands of the Fernandez family. I whispered to myself. I got my clues. I got my story. There wasn't a need to make up one, and to cheat Miss Alice. I just need to figure out the obliterated words, which did not seem to be a piece of cake. Bewildered situations notwithstanding, for my family, for my scholarship, and above all, to find the anonymous villain in my forefather's life, I must unravel this mystery, unravel this mystery, unravel this mystery.